How's it going? We're gonna do a video showing, I'm Jim.
I'm Sarah.
We're gonna put the Luna BBS02 electric bike kit on Sarah's bike. And this is mostly because the other bikes are really heavy. And with this bike kit on here, we're hoping it's gonna be around 40 some pounds.
And also really tall.
Yeah, most of the bikes are not sized for women that are not
Exceptionally tall.
exactly.
Like 5'4.5".
Right. So some of this will probably be cut off a little bit here and there or sped up, but we're gonna kind of take off the crank set here because this is where most of the motor goes for the. Sorry, I was not looking at the camera. Most of the motor goes for the BBS02 and everything goes in here, and then we got the Mighty Mini 52 volt. Can't remember the amp hours off the top of my head. Small battery pack that's going to sit back here on the back of the seat. I won't be wiring it up totally right now because I want to make sure that's all nice and clean. So we're just going to do some disassembly. So
Take it apart.
we might have a small spectator occasionally.
Oh, here she comes.
So the next thing that comes off are the crank arms. Okay, so then some of the things you need when you're doing these kits depends on your bike. You need some sort of bottom bracket tool and some sort of spanner wrench typically to get some of the stuff on there. Hopefully I have the correct ones for this particular bike. You got that off? Mm-hmm. If you want to just wipe that off. Sorry, we're using underwear. That's right. Alright, so now I'm going to take off the front side. If it was an older style bottom bracket, you wouldn't have to take off both sides. You could take off, and that's why I tend to take off the non-drive side, is because I've worked on a lot of older bikes where you don't have to, you could just slide the rest of this out. But with the sealed bottom bracket, you have to take out both sides.
Oh.
Success. If you have the right tool, this is not a bad job at all. If you don't have the right tool, it's really difficult.
Okay, so what do you call this thing then, Jim?
This is a crank, or a pedal wrench, or a, pedal wrench. Or crank arm wrench, I don't know, it's one of those two.
Where can the people get those?
You can get that on, I bought this really inexpensively. It's this XLC brand, pretty cheap. I got it on, I think it was LunaCycle for under 10 bucks. Part Tool they make nice tools, but they charge a nice price for their tools. This is a pretty basic tool, so really any will work. This bottom bracket wrench is the same manufacturer. It's not all that great. I got a spanner wrench, adjustable spanner wrench that was the same company, and it lasted for like a half a use. So this is the hardest part of these particular is getting this part off. It's threaded opposite.
Okay.
I'll be bleeding in a second.
No.
Alright. So Sarah's over there cleaning out the bottom bracket. One thing I recall from the last time I had I've had a BBS02 before on another bike, and one thing I recall from before, and by the way, Luna does a nice job packaging all these. You know, it's all, it came in 2 boxes. One with the Bafang mid-drive, and then the other one with some wiring and the Luna Mighty Max battery. Of course, they do charge for shipping. They're a smaller company, and it is kind of expensive to ship these lithium batteries. But what I was going to say is that some bottom brackets you might have to. My previous one, depending how the threads were run in here, I had to do some filing on the inside to get it to slide through the bottom bracket. I'm going to try it real quick, and we will see. And it works first try.
I'm gonna make it right to the
Score.
Yeah. All right. So one thing I just noticed just looking at this particular bike, it has integrated brake and shifters. And I'm gonna have a hard time mounting this thumb throttle because it has some thickness to it. I'll figure out a way to mount it up here, and when I get to the wiring section and showing all that, I'll show you how I ended up resolving that. Right now we're just gonna put on the sprocket. So this is a 48 tooth, and this matches the kind of the center gearing for the bike originally, and Sarah liked that particular gear. But we're gonna decide on putting this little, it's kind of cheapy, just a chain cover on here. It's not even a chain, so that's just a chain guard, a chain guide, which would be preferable, but because this was previously a triple chainring on the front, I'm just going to lock the front derailleur into a single position to work as a chain guide for this setup. I could remove it down the road, but we're going to see how that goes. One of the reasons I'm not removing it because this bike has integrated shifter brake levers, and I don't want to change the whole brake lever system. So are those pretty tight?
Yeah. I think I got them on here pretty good.
So those came with a little Loctite on them from Luna, so they're seating in there really well. When I flip this around and show the other side, I'm probably not going to finish that until I get some Loctite on there. And now we're going to go ahead and might as well put on the crank arm on the drive side here. I don't have some dry side, it's just the right side. So you want to go ahead and put that one on. It won't go in one spot, you just put the other one opposite. Well, it won't go in one spot, it will go in 4 spots, but the other one just go opposite. So it doesn't really matter where it goes on. And those are just standard threaded. And these are one you do really want to get your crank bolts tight, and that's kind of why you need the crank puller. I guess it's called the crank puller because I just thought of that without thinking about it.
Can you over tighten these?
Not really. You can't really over tighten these too much. That's probably good though. Oh, and one of the things because of the taper, they call it a square taper. They kind of gradually. The spindle starts out smaller and gets larger, and it's the opposite on the pedal. So it kind of does one of these numbers, kind of links together really solidly. I'm just gonna have Sarah put on the seat bag because you see how that's gonna sit on there. Even though I'll probably have to pull it back off when I do the wiring, but I just want to show it real quick. So that's kind of, and what I'm going to do is the wiring is going to come in here. There's some space around this battery, so I'm going to try to make this really nice and clean. I'm going to come up under, I might do something with the kickstand. I might change some, I might even try to convince Sarah to get a different kickstand. So I wanted to point out that I've done this before so I'm probably futzing around a bit. I have some idea what's going on with this, but it doesn't seem like there aren't directions in here, so you have to pull them off of Luna's website. And I also need to, here I'll show you really quick. So on this side of the bottom bracket, we move from the side where the chainring is. You gotta, we'll turn this up to get as high as I can without interfering with the cabling. And then this little, I don't know what you call it, but it's got little teeth on the one side, and the teeth go to the inside because they actually bite into the frame. This motor has a lot of torque, and because the torque is turning the crank forward, it also wants to turn the motor this way. So if you don't get this tight enough, your motor could actually spin. So that's why you don't want it, yeah. So once this is tightened into place, then you use the first lock ring, which you can use a spanner wrench to connect into and lock into place. So that lock ring goes there. And you got to get that really tight. And then the final thing is this one's a little more decorative, but it does have a Newton meters of force gauge on it, and this one used kind of a different style of, I think this is just a different style bottom bracket wrench to tighten that in. So, and that kind of just cleans up the look here. So I'm gonna hand tighten it in here so you can just kind of see what it's gonna look like. And so that goes in like that. And then you throw the other crank arm on this side and you're good to start getting your wiring together. That wasn't that bad, was it?
No, that seemed pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
After you get the pedals off.
Yeah. Pedals. Yeah, I destroyed one bike frame or set of crank arms by not knowing about the opposite turning on pedals. So the left pedal is reverse threaded. That's the way to remember it. But the way you can remember it better maybe is because when you pedal forward, you want the pedals always be tightening. So they both turn forward. Forward is tightening on pedals. So that way if you're pedaling, you wouldn't loosen the pedals. So I'll come back another day, probably outside because it'll hopefully be nice outside. Alright, we did the little installation video on the Luna BBS02 kit. Could you open up the back on the bag? So I just want to show you the completed product on this this Luna kit install, and just a quick, we'll ask Sarah what she thinks of it. So this is what we ended up doing. We ended up putting the Mighty Mini, which is a 52 volt 6 amp hour battery, here in the trunk bag, and just punched a little hole in the trunk bag to come through. And they have these nice Anderson connectors that Luna supplies you with, and it gives it some room in here. And they always have the 2 amp charger in here. I'm going to show some of the way we set this up. So I went ahead and ran the cabling kind of beside the motor here, trying to, rather than around the end of it. And because of this, and I put this wire wrap, and I'll put the part number to the wire wrapping here just to make it a little cleaner looking. And this disconnect, this length comes from Luna. There's also another section of the same Anderson connector they give you to attach onto here. This bike, because it's got kind of shorter chain stays, you kind of have to, I kind of had to wind back some of this wire for the speed sensor here, and changed out the kickstand because I wanted to be able to bring the cabling up through where the previous kickstand was mounted. There's the motor, and so this bike had integrated shifters and brake levers. So I went ahead and used that, and I wrapped the cable along the electrical wires along the same cable for this rear shifter that's not being used anymore, because I'm using that. I basically locked the front derailleur into place to work as a chain guide. There was a little, because of that clearance on here, because of the clearance with these integrated levers, I had to finagle around the throttle versus the keypad control. So that, in some ways it'd be nice to put other brake levers on here, but then you'd have to change the shifters out, so I didn't want to do that. And then the last thing is, there's a lot of extra wires here, and this is about as clean as I could get it, wrapping them like this. There's not a whole lot you can do, because they have some extra length for different size frames.
What I like about this is that this was basically a 33, 34 pound bike before we added the kit.
Right.
And with the kit, the rack, the trunk bag, and all of the wires and electrical components, what we maybe added about 4 or 5 pounds. The battery itself is
I don't remember what the
3
measurement.
pounds.
I'll put the measurement on the video, but I don't remember what that final measurement was.
I think it's right around 38.
Right.
Now. So, yeah, about 5-6 pounds.
Right.
So that means that it's pretty easy to maneuver. I got to get it into and out of a building with an elevator, so it's a little bit of weight, but it's still enough that you can heft it up.
48 tooth sprocket on the front, because that's about what was on here before. Yeah, it's got a lot of power. It's really surprising for the size of that battery. The battery's only about 3 pounds, a little over 3 pounds. And it's all from LunaCycle. They had some special going for their 4th anniversary, so there was a bit of a discount at that time. But oh, and then they said there's a $20 discount code, I think it is, that they gave me, and that'll be in the description below, along with timestamps and stuff. So I'm just going to point out a couple things on the display. So it does give you your lifetime odometer right down there, almost 100 miles.
Is that the lifetime? That's the trip.
Is that the trip?
Yeah.
Oh, it is trip. You're right. 110 okay, trip in total. This one's set up for 9 levels of assist, or no, 5. You can configure that in the menu for different numbers of assist levels. There's a lot of configuration, and you can actually get a programming cable and overvolt what's coming out of the. I tend to keep it standard because you end up having longer lifetime of your components when you don't put more juice through it. Looks pretty clean, I think. It doesn't really make it stand out to like being an e-bike.
Catch the wave, feel the